Hello, welcome to Library Connection. I'm Mandi Cantrell with the B.B. Comer Memorial Library in Sylacauga. We've got today a story time for all ages. The first book I'd like to share with you is really a collection of poems. It's called Stitchin and Pullin, a Gee's Bend Quilt. Gee's Bend is a community here in Alabama that I heard about during the bicentennial. They were virtually unnoticed until sometime in the 1990s when they were discovered, and their beautiful quilts are now on display all over the world and pretty famous. So this is a collection of poems by the author Patricia McKissack, who went to Gee's Bend and spent about a week with these ladies and learned how they quilt and the stories they share with their families as they're quilting and how each quilt tells a story. Gee's Bend women. Gee's Bend women are mothers and grandmothers, wives, sisters and daughters, widows. Gee's Bend women are cooks and homemakers, gardeners, church members, choir members, leaders. Gee's Bend women are talented and creative, capable, makers of artful quilts, unmatched. Gee's Bend women are relatives, neighbors, friends, same as me. Who would have thought? For as long as anybody can remember, the women of Gee's Bend have stitched up quilts to be slept on and under, sat on at a picnic, wrapped in when sick, or covered with while reading on a cold winter night. Who would have thought that one day those same quilts would be hanging on museum walls, their makers famous? Who would have ever thought? Beneath the quilting frame. Baby girl, that's me, played beneath the quilting frame on a 9-patch quilt my great-great-grandmother and her sisters made when great-gran was herself a baby girl. I remember the warm brown faces of my mama, grandma, great-gran as they sewed, talked, sang, and laughed above my tinted playground. All the while, steady fingers pieced together colorful scraps of familiar cloth into something more lovely than anything they had been before. Oh, how I remember. I remember Mama's gentle voice singing softly, lulling her baby girl to sleep. Something else. My space beneath the quilting frame became too small for my growing legs and a questioning mind. Busy, threading needles and cutting scraps, I listened and learned the recipes for 11 kinds of jelly, what to do for teething toddlers, how to get rid of mold, and the words to 100 hymns and gospel songs, all the while waiting for my turn. Where to start? Today, Grandma winked at me. There is a promise in her smile. It is your time, she says, to piece your own quilt. How did you begin your first quilt? I asked Mama. She's getting ready for work and the long drive over to Camden. Look for the heart. She pulls me close. When you find the heart, your work will leap to life, strong, beautiful, and independent. Remembering. Mama told me cloth has a memory. I hope the black corduroy remembers that it was once the pants my uncle wore to go vote for the first time, all clean and new. I hope the pink and green flowered tablecloth remembers the peach cobbler I spilled on it at the 4th of July picnic before my brother went off to school in Boston when we were still all together. I hope the white lace handkerchief remembers how pretty my cousin looked the day she got married to Junior all over again. I hope the dark blue work shirt remembers how hard Daddy has worked all his life. If by chance the cloth forgets, I want to always remember all of it. Nothing wasted. Grandma wants me to learn to quilt using the old ways, all by hand, nothing wasted. Her nut brown hands gently unraveled the stitches from the hem of an old red and white gingham dress. Stitch by stitch, slowly she backs out of the dress. taking apart what she'd put together long ago. Snip, snip, pull. The thread is gone. The dress falls apart. A puddle of red and white gingham on the floor. Now I know. A patch of Grandma's old dress will be the heart of my quilt. Puzzling the pieces. A quilt is a puzzle made of cloth, squares of red and white gingham, solid rectangles, print ones too, dotted triangles, and a few plaids mixed in, flowered circles and long narrow strips spread out on the floor. Now comes the puzzling, mixing and matching, colors, shapes, and patterns, finding combination of pieces that fit like a puzzle, making a picture, telling a story. The River Island. Grandma says her quilts tell a story, so mine will tell one too. My story. Long strips of brown cotton border 3 sides of my quilt, just as G's Bend is surrounded on 3 sides by brown muddy waters, creating a river island perfect for snakes and alligators. A strip of green is the 4th border, a symbol of the fields where my ancestors worked cotton from can to cant. Can see in the morning until can't see at night. Years of toil on the G's Bend plantation owned by the G family who lived in a huge house called Sandy Hill. Above the green strip I placed 6 squares that form the small communities of Brown Quarters, White Quarters, Rehoboth, Sodom, Over the Creek, Lebanon, where families with the same name are not kin by blood, but by plantation. Being discovered. A large smoke gray square stands for hard times because I've heard great-grandpa say, during the Depression of the 1930s, bad luck and trouble hovered over us sharecroppers like a big old smothering gray hand. Then great-grand adds, our houses were 1 or 2 room shacks with dirt floors and plastered in newspaper to keep out the winter wind. Most of us didn't even have indoor plumbing, but it was home. The land was poor. My great-grandparents were poorer still. But we didn't know it, my mama puts in. We managed to be happy somehow. Then G's Bend was discovered by sociologists, historians, educators, and journalists who came from everywhere, some to help, some to share, some to study, some just to see. Photographers took hundreds of pictures. I've seen one of great-grand with Grandma, who was just a baby. G's Bend got the hiccups from all the excitement of cameras clicking, writers scribbling on pads, people talking breathlessly, never waiting for answers. Then it was over. G's Bend took a deep breath and went back to the way it had been before being discovered. Once the river ran free, then they built the dam and said it was progress. Acres and acres of rich farmland known as the Bottom are flooded now. Land where black men and women named Petway and Bennett grew cotton before the Civil War for no pay. Where sharecroppers named Mingo and Williams worked the soil for very little pay. And where black farmers named Bendoff, Young, and Irby scratched out a living for slow pay. Now cottonmouths, alligators, and catfish live in the Bottom. Call that progress? I'm going to pause right here for a commercial break, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes to read the rest of Stitchin and Pullin.
While you're at home with family for the next few weeks, don't put off scheduling home repairs. Call Ox Foundation for a free estimate. With more time at home, you tend to notice things you haven't in the past. Mold and moisture in your basement or crawl space, uneven driveways, stair-step cracks in your exterior brick, uneven floors and doors. If your home is showing weakness, it's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Stay strong, Alabama.
A funeral service represents a family's final farewell to their loved ones. Knowing this, we go beyond what is expected to ensure the ceremony is beautiful and memorable, a truly fitting tribute to that special life. We invite you to visit us to meet our staff and tour our renovated facility complete with a new dining area and catering services. We've been serving the people of this area for over 40 years, and we think that you'll be pleased to find that making lasting impressions remains our first priority. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.
We're facing unprecedented times, and prayer and positive thought are antidotes for our anxiety. Please continue your prayers for our medical profession, our leaders, our first responders, and those afflicted with this virus. My name is Mark Ledbetter, president of the Coosa Valley Ministerial Association, and I encourage you to reach out to local pastors for any spiritual or emotional needs. God will see us through these trying times.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Welcome back to Library Connection. I'm going to read the rest of Stitchin and Pullin, a G's Ben quilt. Colors. Grandma says blue cools, red is loud and hard to control, like fire in a gossiping tongue. Green oozes, orange laughs, pink smiles, yellow warms, black protects, white shifts its shades from soft and bright to dingy. Purple is quiet. Lavender is sweet-smelling like a newborn baby. Brown is hard-working. Grandma says, colors show how you feel deep down inside. I feel yellow right now with a hint of orange. Stereotypes. Haven't been able to work on my quilt for 2 weeks. My cousin Ashlyn's been visiting from New York City. She left this morning. Yes, I will miss her, maybe. Ashlyn thinks she is as cool as blue. She reminds me of a duck, calm on the surface, but paddling like crazy underneath to stay afloat. The idea of making a quilt was way too country for Ashlyn. I'd rather paint or write a poem, she said. Quilting is painting a poem with fabric, I told her. Never mind. We still did what she wanted to do. TV, cell phones, CD players, video games, and a laptop computer with internet hookup. She was so surprised we have these things. I was surprised she thought we didn't. Pinky. Back in the 1960s, Mr. Willie Quill broke horses for the Alabama State Mounted Patrol. Fine horses, well-trained. Mr. Willie Quill knew his horses. He knew Jimmy Lee Jackson, too, a young man from Marion who was shot because he wanted to vote. We decided to protest the senseless killings by marching from Selma to the Capitol in Montgomery, remembers Mr. Willie Quill. The 54-mile march began in Selma at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. 600 of us stood on the bridge ready to march, but the governor said no, we couldn't. We walked anyway. Midway the bridge, the mounted troopers attacked. I remember seeing those horses heading straight into us. We held hands and prayed. Beating hooves pound against the blacktop and nightsticks hum as the troopers swing them like lassos. Mr. Willie Quill braces for death, but not today, not Bloody Sunday. Mercifully, he sees one of his horses. I throwed up my arm and hollered, "Pinky!" The horse broke stride and veered away, allowing Mr. Willie Quill to live, to tell the story. Mr. Willie Quill broke horses for the Alabama State Mounted Patrol. Fine horses, well-trained. Ask anybody. Mr. Willie Quill knew his horses. Thank goodness, Pinky knew him. Dr. King brings hope. I stitch a patch of bright pink to remember Pinky's story. Next to it, I sew a spotless white patch for the hope Dr. Martin Luther King brought to the Bend. I've only read about Dr. King. Grandma saw him, heard him, marched with him. On a stormy February night in 1965, Dr. King spoke at Pleasant Grove Baptist Church. Grandma, with Mama in her arms, was among the first to arrive. Every pew was soon filled. People stood. Some even stood outside in the rain. With misty eyes, Grandma says, the words we heard that night changed our lives. Peace, hope, justice, equality, truth, love, freedom. I would have followed him anywhere, and she did. The right to vote. Folks from Gee's Bend crossed the river to Camden, Alabama to register to vote. The next week or so, they shut down the ferry. Though the ferry is open today, it wasn't then. The official reason was no money to keep it running. Grandma recalls that time. Sure as I tell you, it was done to keep us from voting. Instead of a 20-minute ferry ride, the only way to get from Gee's Bend to Camden was to make the 50-mile trip by car or walk. I would have crawled to vote. Grandma's voice is strong. I believe her. What changed? In 1971, the all-black school was closed in Gee's Bend. Black students were bused to an all-white school 50 miles away. Then white students went to private schools. Today, the once all-white school is now mostly black. So what changed? Grandma votes, no matter what. I go to school, no matter where. Determination is rooted in our family tree, and that hasn't changed. By and by. How many times have I heard the women sing and cry and comfort each other while quilting and remembering? So I sing too. I stitch a patch of golden thank yous for James Reeb, a young Boston preacher who was killed for believing in justice. In the background, I hear Grandma's voice softly singing, "When the Morning Comes." A bright blue piece of velvet for Viola Luzo, a Detroit housewife who also came to Gee's Bend to help with the big march. Brave Viola, wife, mother, friend, an American hero assassinated because she believed in justice and freedom. Will we really understand it better by and by? I will mourn in a big plaid people circle of white, black, brown, yellow, and red for Reverend Dr. King, who was shot on that awful April day in Memphis in 1968, they say. Will we ever understand it by and by? Grandma says that darkness must have its hour, but morning always comes. Until then, we must tell the story of how we've overcome, so we'll understand it better by and by. Gee's Bend quilters were discovered again in the 1960s, and the Freedom Quilting Bee was formed to make and sell quilts. Orders came all the way from New York City. Were you a part of the bee, Great Grand? She closes her eyes and thinks before speaking. Each quilt meant a job, some money, a possible way out of poverty. My children profited from it, but with the orders also came strict rules. Not a stitch could be out of place. Only traditional designs could be used. 9-patch, wedding ring, bear claw. Any variations were rejected. Yes, more money, less freedom. I chose to stay free. My way with corduroy. Come the 1970s, the Freedom Quilting Bee began to fill orders for Sears Roebuck. Loads of corduroy were sent to Gee's Bend from Alabama textile mills. Big bolts of it for quilting pillows, bright pillows of red, yellow, blue, and green. Corduroy. There is music in Great Grand's voice when she recalls. Good times came, stitching corduroy. Great fabric for quilting my designs. My way. Love that corduroy. All understanding will come later. My quilt top is pieced. I spread it on the bed. Great Grand nods her approval, and Mama smiles. Grandma leads me to the frame on the porch. Knowing hands put my quilt in place. How long will it take? I ask. Great Grand shushes me. Come, join us. She holds out her hand. Mama hums by and by. 5 women surround me at the quilting frame, all stitching and pulling, singing the old spirituals, same as always, except today I am a part of the group. Coffee-colored, berry-stained, nimble fingers with clumsy thumbs, stitching and pulling together in a slow and steady rhythm, patient hands that guide without force, teach without punishment, an old process, women stitching and pulling together. When will we finish, I ask? Grandma's eyes and the tilt of her head say, be patient. Quilting takes time, days, even weeks. Relax and enjoy. I stitch and pull and listen in the warm yellow glow of an afternoon sun on the blue quiet of my grandma's porch. The other women smile because they know. Finish. For several days I've been asking, are we finished yet? Grandma laughs and her cheeks rise in gentle mounds. With this one last stitch. I bite the thread and nod it. Finished. I have my first quilt, stitching and pulling with the others, but I am not complete. There are hundreds of ideas in my head. Quilts that are about me, the place where I live, and the people who have been here for generations. Why are you crying, Grandma asked. An understanding will come, she says. By and by, I add. That is a great story. I love hearing how each story is, each quilt is a story, each person's story. We're going to pause for another commercial break and we'll be right back for another story about Alabama.
A funeral service represents a family's final farewell to their loved ones. Knowing this, we go beyond what is expected to ensure the ceremony is beautiful and memorable, a truly fitting tribute to that special life. We invite you to visit us to meet our staff and tour our renovated facility complete with a new dining area and catering services. We've been serving the people of this area for over 40 years, and we think that you'll be pleased to find that making lasting impressions remains our first priority. Curtis & Son Funeral Home, Sylacauga, Childersburg.
WOTM is the television provider for all Alabama High School Athletic Association championship events and special programs. WOTM is your home for the Super 7 football, state finals basketball, baseball and softball state championships, the AHSAA weekly show, and WOTM also produced the first ever football playoff show, Super 7 preview show, and reclassification reveal show. Your exclusive home for all things AHSAA is WOTM. Contact your local cable provider to request WOTM to your channel lineup.
Things a little bumpy in your driveway? Ox Foundation Solutions has the expertise and the know-how to repair cracks, wet basements and crawl spaces, and uneven floors in your home. Ox Foundation Solutions will come up with the right fix for you. It's time to get strong. How strong? Ox Strong. Get a free estimate from Ox Foundations.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Welcome back to Library Connection. The last book I want to share with you came out during our bicentennial, which Alabama became 200 years old in December of 2019. This is a great book I've shared with students and adults and everywhere. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. Alabama, My Home Sweet Home. Alabama celebration, 200 years in the nation, from the mountains of Mentone to the shores of Mobile Bay. Come join the fun, bring everyone. There's much to see along the way. Hello, I'm Camellia, your bear cub guide. I'm Alabama's mascot. I wear our flower with pride. So here we go, we're ready to roam across Alabama, our home sweet home. From north to south, from east to west, we're on the way, we're on a quest to see the state we all adore. People, places, and so much more. Welcome to the Rocket City. Huntsville is her name. She sent a rocket to the moon and brought our state great fame. Decatur is the river city. Oh, what a beautiful place. The birth home of Mae Jemison, first African-American woman in space. Helen Keller taught us how each challenge makes us strong. W.C. Handy played the blues and filled our lives with song. Jesse Owens loved to run, the greatest athlete in track. He went to the Olympics and brought gold medals back. Let's climb up Cheaha Mountain, the highest in the state. Come watch the eagles soar. The camping here is great. The largest iron statue ever made by man, Vulcan stands high on the hill watching over Birmingham. America's oldest baseball park is Rickwood Field in Birmingham, where young Babe Ruth and Willie Mays dreamed of hitting a big grand slam. Bo Jackson was an athlete, the greatest of all time. He showed the world how legends play when he was in his prime. There is Coach Bear Bryant with his team, the Crimson Tide. They fought their way to victory and brought our state great pride. An eagle soars above the crowd before each game begins. The Auburn Tigers football team gets ready for more wins. The brave airmen of Tuskegee fought in World War II. George Washington Carver made peanuts something new. Marchers crossed the Pettus Bridge and helped to heal our hate. Catherine Tucker Wyndham told stories about our state. Native Americans called Moundville home 1,000 years ago. They made clay pots, planted maize, and hunted with a bow. The dark, rich soil of the Black Belt grew Demopolis into a town. It sits on top of White Bluff, where the Tombigbee River is found. Who's that lady? What's all the fuss? It's Rosa Parks in the front of the bus. There's Hank Williams singing his song, and Martin Luther King Jr. still standing strong. A story of standing up for truth was written by Harper Lee, an author from Monroeville whose book made history. By growing lots of peanuts, Dothan earned a reputation. This peanut capital of the world feeds our peanut-loving nation. Welcome to the town of Fairhope, where artists like to go, and every shop and sidewalk is putting on a show. Here's the USS Alabama, the battleship from World War II. It's on display in Mobile Bay for everyone to view. Mobile is the home of legends, the famous pitcher Satchel Paige, Hank Aaron, and Willie McCovey all played in baseball's golden age. Here we are at the end of our journey on the sugar white sands we roam, playing on the beach of Gulf Shores in Alabama, our home sweet home. And you'll see on the very last page, it's nicknames of people and places in Alabama. People like Hank Aaron, who was Hammerin' Hank, Bear Bryant, W.C. Handy, Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Jesse Owens, Rosa Parks, and Catherine Tucker Wyndham. And the places: Auburn, the loveliest village on the plains; Birmingham, the magic city; Decatur, the river city; Dothan, the peanut capital of the world; Huntsville, the rocket city; Mobile, the azalea city; Monroeville, literary capital of the world; Montgomery, capital of the South; Sylacauga, the marble city; and Tuscaloosa, T-Town. Really cool that we made it into the book as the Marble City. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this book. The author is Charles Ghinga, who is also from our state in Alabama. Like I said, this was very big during the bicentennial, and a great book to have to learn about some places you might like to visit right here in our own state. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've enjoyed sharing these stories with you. The G's Ben quilt was just a joy to me, and then I always enjoy sharing this book about Alabama. Thank you for joining me on Library Connection, and we hope you'll come see us at the library very soon.